The Hunter Biden laptop story, the New York Post.
Yeah, we have that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
Angelenos will vote on a bill that would force every hotel in town welcome homeless people.
Oh my gosh, Facebook has admitted that they censored the Hunter Biden story. There's homeless votes in LA. Will they allow people to just wander around hotels? A hot dog beer trick that everybody needs to see. Ben Shapiro strikes the fear in the heart of all of the people at some podcast episode. And for the first time, we have an in-studio special guest because she was so irritated at one of the stories that I was going to show this morning. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. On today, it is August 26th, the year of our Lord 2022. Mark Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday and said, flat out, kind of, yeah, we censored the Hunter Biden story. We algorithmically lessened its reach across our platform. We'll talk about that. We'll play the really long clip. But before that, I would like to talk about probably the dumbest idea in the history of civilization. Los Angeles is going through, well, has a homeless problem, as you probably already know. And oh my gosh, what they're going to try to do to solve it will blow your mind. I want you to watch this clip from CNN, and then, like I said, we have a very, very special guest who was so irritated when I showed her this video this morning that she's decided to come all the way over to the studio to comment on it before she heads off to work. Watch this clip from CNN about what Los Angeles is attempting to do with their homeless population and their vacant hotel rooms. This is going to blow your mind at how stupid it is. Yeah, we'll discuss on the other side. Also, before I play this, if you haven't already, click the little like button and the little share button or the little laughing button, because this is going to be a hilarious segment. This is perfect for a Friday. Little hilarious segment. Just click react with the post in any way, shape, or form. I'll try to grab some comments up here, and we will get the ball rolling. All right, check this out from CNN on the dumbest idea ever in the history of the world. Check it out.
In Los Angeles County, more than 60,000 people are homeless on the average night. And more than 20,000 hotel rooms lie empty on the average night. See where this might be going?
It's insane. It isn't going to solve the problem.
We think this is one part of the solution. By no means do we think this solves the homelessness crisis. But do hotels have a role to play? Of course they do.
So the union he leads, which reps hotel workers, gathered enough signatures, and Angelenos will vote on a bill that would force every hotel in town to report vacancies at 2 p.m. every day, then welcome homeless people into those vacant rooms.
Honestly, would you check into a hotel knowing that the chance of your neighbor to the left or right is a homeless individual?
OMG. Okay, so there are 60,000 supposedly homeless people on the streets of Los Angeles County each and every night. There are 22,000 vacant hotel rooms everywhere from Motel 6s to Motel 8s to the Biltmore and the W Hotel, which are very, very fancy. There's supposedly a law that's going to say that hotels have to open their doors to homeless people. Here to comment on this is my wife, who works in a jail setting, and when I showed her this story earlier today, she was so irritated, given the fact that, well, I'll give her a little background in a second, but she was so irritated, decided before work, come all the way here to the studio and give us some insight on homeless people. Now, this is my wife, Crystal, in case if you've been watching for a long time, maybe you know that. I've had some funny stories with her. So she works in a jail, which effectively, and correct me if I'm wrong, effectively houses homeless people who are on drugs. So, I showed her the CNN clip and was like, this is what they're planning on doing, and I don't think her jaw has dropped any further. She had to gather it up off the floor before responding to how ridiculous this is. Now, this is our first time having somebody in the actual studio space, so I don't even know if that mic works super well. So first off here, can you just briefly explain what the homeless people are like in the jail setting that you work in?
Yeah.
And then also, what happens to them after they leave jail?
Okay. Yeah. So in jail, also, I don't know, BT dubs. So I'm a therapist.
Sorry, she's a therapist. She's not a police officer. Doesn't
not that cool. But yeah. So in jail, I don't know. I feel like people maybe don't have the best impression or reality of the living situation or the way that homeless people live. I mean, we have people. I've had a guy who he gets his food, and it comes in like a little cardboard box, and he keeps all the cardboard boxes. And his toilet works in his cell, but he poops in the boxes. And then he keeps the boxes, and then he puts another box on top of the box.
I didn't know that she was going to tell the pooping in the box story. No, that's fine. I'm just giving people fair warning of what's coming here and where this is going in terms of having people live in some of the nicest hotels in the world in Los Angeles County.
Right. So just to clarify, the toilet is there and the toilet works, but these are people who don't use the toilet. So I'm a little concerned about how they're going to know to use the toilet in the hotel room.
Okay.
Among other things.
How do people and when I say jail, I'm not necessarily talking about this deep imprisonment camp, because in a lot of ways, just arresting people in the state of California, how long are they in your system, and then how many times do you see people again after they get released?
I mean, it varies, but for a lot of people, they don't stay very long, and it's actually it's a little disheartening. I know this is kind of a funny story, but trying to not make it too dark. But we get people that come in and they're coming off of whatever it is that they're coming off of. We get them in there for a few weeks. We get them back on meds. We kind of get them maybe a little bit stable, at least so that they're going to the bathroom in the toilet. And then within a few weeks, they get released because they get released. And then I go, all right, see you probably in about a week or two. And then we come back and we start at square one and we're back to pooping in the boxes again.
So now your jail is not in LA County, but in LA County, when they release people out of jail and you say they come back in probably 2 to 3 weeks, what would happen in those 2 to 3 weeks? Do you think if the Los Angeles voters open up all of the hotels to homeless people, they might wander into the hotels and poop on the walls in the hotel rooms?
It's very likely that would happen. It's very likely. And not to go into the hotels to shower. I think that's what is difficult, is we have this beautiful fantasy image of they'll go in, they'll get clean, they'll shower, they'll clean themselves up, they'll be okay. But that's not. You're thinking in a logical mindset, and you can't use logic for someone who's not able to think logically for whatever reason, whether that be to a mental illness or substance use, or honestly both, because those are not separate entities. They're all intermixed into one thing.
So there is a guy who, and this is, we won't labor on this too long. We'll get back to the See Dead video because it's hilarious. But there was a guy in the clip that we're going to play in a bit that was talking about, this is just the hotel. It's their obligation to do what they want to do. And I guess you might have just answered it, but what is how off base is his perception of what would happen versus what would actually happen?
I feel like, wait, did you already show that?
No, I haven't.
I just feel like you're going to hear from this guy, and to me, it's just so evident that he has not spent time in a space with homeless people. This is my every single day. And you have this guy who comes in with this this beautiful idea of this is, such a great way to just, not solve altogether, but it's a stride in the right direction. And it's dude, you have to me, it's just so evident that he has no idea how homeless people live. I don't know. It's kind of, it's both like frustrating, but also just like comical at the same time. That
well, no. So this is not any sense of like, well, we don't think that these people should get help that they need, but this is just not the way
to do it.
Yeah.
Like if we all sign a poll to say, or we go around the neighborhood and we say, you know what, at 4 a.m. we're allowed to go into the neighbor's house, and we get all the neighbors to sign it, and now we get to go across the street and we go knock on the door and so, hey, well, we all signed this. So it can happen now. Like is that how it works? Like, is that?
Yeah. So if you're just joining us, Los Angeles County is voting on a bill that would force hotels, private businesses, to open their doors to homeless people. And my wife was so irritated about that, she decided to come all the way over here on her way to work and describe what it's like working with homeless people every day and how bad of an idea that would be. Last thing. What are the chances that people would continue to stay at Los Angeles hotels if there was a chance that Clem was going to be their next door neighbor? Would you do it?
I would not.
And we stay in some pretty rough hotels.
We do.
Because we're cheap.
Falling on a budget. But no, I just, and again, I think people think, oh, well, it's not nice to walk on the other side of the street or to distance yourself. But truly, like, I work firsthand with these people, and many of them are so out of contact, are so disoriented that they are, not everybody, but some of them, they are violent. I have a lot of people who are physically and verbally aggressive, and they're totally unprovoked. And so now you're going to be in a confined space in a hotel,
in an elevator,
in an elevator, like, and you, if you have a family and you have kids, like, I would tell people, like, it's not wrong of you to want to protect yourself and to protect your family. And you don't not err on the side of caution just because, well, I don't want it to offend anybody or I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. Like, I have plenty of people that I've talked to who, once they clear up and they're now stable, I'll go back and say, hey, remember what you were like when you first came in? Half of them don't even remember. And the ones that do are like, yeah, that was pretty bad, huh? I'm like, yeah, like, they recognize too, like, when they're not stable, when they're coming off of drugs, meth is the big, like, it's not about not hurting feelings. It's just about your safety. And I wouldn't stay in those hotels.
Yeah. So there you have it. Los Angeles is putting it up to a vote. We're going to continue to play more of this video, but hey, thanks for coming in. I'll love you. See you after work.
Okay.
I want to play more of this video clip there as we kind of continue on in the dumbest idea in the world. Check this out, more from CNN.
Manoj Patel voluntarily rents some rooms to homeless people who are vetted and paid for by a local church, but he's against this bill that would make that mandatory.
We barely are surviving, number one. Number two, we have to think of the safety of our staff. And number three, we're not professionally or any otherwise equipped with any of the supporting mechanism that the homeless guest would require.
What services would be provided remains unclear. Also unclear the funding, and hotels would be paid fair market rate.
It's up to the city. I mean, they did it during Project Room Key.
The pandemic-era program now winding down that inspired this bill by placing more than 10,000 people in hotels that volunteered. Sean Bigdelli among them.
Well, first of all, it's a blessing. It's a great room. The technology is not up to par, but, what technology do you have in a tent?
This bill would also force developers to replace housing demolished to make way for new hotels, and hotel permits would be introduced, as well as making every hotel from a Super 8 to the Biltmore accept homeless people as guests.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Why not?
Maybe for some, but there's a lot of people with untreated mental health, and some people do some damage to these poor buildings, man.
This happened.
So, all right, I'm going to cut it off there because I think this goes on long enough. The whole thing was great, so that's why I wanted to bring it. I want to go to the end part of it here and kind of go from there. This is a bill, that voters are going to vote on to force private businesses to accept homeless people, drug addicts, mostly. We're not talking, just FYI too, I'm not talking about people who, I don't know, fell on a difficult medical bill and missed their rent and now they're living in their car. One, you don't see those people on the streets. They stay hidden pretty well and will hopefully get back on their feet. There's plenty of services in California that will help them do that. And also, the majority of people that you see on the streets and that are attacking people in the parks and pooping in high schools are on drugs. So those are the type of people that are being helped. That are going to be forced into these hotels. All right, want to play the end of this clip before we wrap this up and move to Facebook and Hunter Biden. Check this out.
Gas, it just doesn't work out.
We don't want to head backwards into the segregated South, but that's kind of the language that they're talking about. There's a certain class of people, less than humans, animals they almost describe them as, to be honest with you. They don't seem to understand who the unhoused are. We're talking again about seniors, students, working people. That's who the voucher program would benefit the most.
Yeah, so all right, so that's that whole thing. That guy there is the union rep out in that area that's pushing this bill, and he's very excited to hopefully get more money in his pocket if the world's dumbest idea comes to fruition. I hope people living in Los Angeles County, you're not this stupid. I don't think you are. You've passed some pretty dumb laws. You put some pretty dumb people inside of office in Los Angeles County. But hopefully you're not this dumb. I want to get to this. This is super fascinating, transitioning to this. We do a lot of stuff on Facebook. Actually, in a lot of ways, Facebook has been, for at least me, the least censory. I know a lot of you have been in Facebook jail. I get that. I get all of that sort of stuff. But in terms of all the other big platforms, YouTube, Twitter specifically, Facebook and Instagram, although have their major problems with censorship, I think is less bad than a lot of the other social media platforms. Having said that, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO and founder of Facebook, went on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday, and Joe Rogan asked him about the Hunter Biden laptop story. This is a long clip, and I got the whole thing in its entirety. Maybe we'll jump in here in just some random spots here to kind of break it up a little bit and talk about maybe put some context in there. But this is all fascinating. This is Mark Zuckerberg responding to a question about whether or not Facebook and the algorithm censored the Hunter Biden story just before the presidential election in 2020. Check this out. Also, if you haven't already, I see a couple thousand of you watching that. A lot of great comments. I'll read them to my wife that she was on here. If you're just joining us, my wife was so irritated about the hotel and homeless people story. She stopped by on her way to work and decided to talk about it, as she works with homeless and drug addicts all day, every day. Anyways, if you haven't already, click the little like button or the little reaction button or the little share button, or let us know in the comment section, have you been blackballed by social media? Watch this clip from Joe Rogan talking to Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook.
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like, there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York
we
Post.
have that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically, the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could.
So basically, you could still share it. You could still click the little button. So just for context, too, when the Hunter Biden story came out in the New York Post, no, you weren't even allowed to send it as a message. Remember that? And also, too, I know this goes without saying, and I don't need to remind everybody watching this show. It turned out everything was totally accurate. Hunter Biden actually is a crackhead who gave his laptop to some random store and then forgot about it. all of that was true. But in the interim, before anybody decided to fact check it, as slow as they possibly could, remember it took the New York Times like a year and a half to finally say, oh yeah, this is real. In that time, Twitter didn't even let you share the article and then locked the New York Post out of their account for 2 weeks. And you weren't allowed to message it, you weren't allowed to tweet it, you weren't allowed to do anything about it. So what Zuckerberg is saying, you were still allowed to share it, but it wouldn't go anywhere and nobody would see it. So that's what he's saying, basically admitting that, well, we covered this thing up. And here's another thing that he also said that was kind of interesting. Lefties for the longest time were skeptical of the FBI, and justifiably so. COINTELPRO was a crazy time in the FBI. If you don't know anything about J. Edgar Hoover and his 50-year reign over the inception and the rule over the Federal Bureau of Investigation, look into that. There are some good, valid reasons why people should be skeptical of the FBI. But now, the left, which has had a lifelong skepticism of authorities like the FBI and the CIA, now cheers them when they go and raid Mar-a-Lago, or Mark Zuckerberg says, well, the FBI told us we should be looking out for this, so we listen to them, because who wouldn't listen to the FBI? All of that is just a weird flip in today's culture. Okay, sorry, we'll continue play it on this a little bit longer.
Still share it. You could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head,
Good
but
question.
it's meaningful. But basically, a lot of people were still able to share it. We got a lot of complaints that was the case. Obviously this is a hyper political issue, so depending on what side of the political spectrum, you either think we didn't censor it enough or censored it way too much. But we weren't sort of as black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's a very professional law enforcement, they come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
Yeah, so basically the FBI said, hey, you should watch out for this sort of thing. And Facebook's response was, all right, we're just going to take it down until the story dies, until after the election. Now, would that have changed the outcome of the election? I don't actually know. But it would have definitely got the news coverage that it deserved, as the whole thing was true, ultimately. So there's that. I got one more video, but I wanted to get to this. This is actually freaking hilarious. I want to talk about big platform, big tech, I don't know, numbers, people listening on podcasts. There, I guess, was a convention. Is it in Austin, Texas? I'm not entirely sure where it is. It is the PM22 convention, the podcast media? Shoot. What's this called? Podcast Movement. The Podcast Movement Expo, in which the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's outlet, also Matt Walsh is over there, Candace Owens is over there, a lot of big names, Gina Carano is over there, a lot of big names over at the Daily Wire. Daily Wire had a booth at this Podcast Movement Expo, and Ben Shapiro, I guess, was scheduled to speak on a panel there and wandered into the expo area. Now, I've been invited to conventions like this sort of thing, obviously nowhere near Ben Shapiro's capacity. But yeah, you kind of you go and you wander around and you do your thing, and then you go do your panel, and that's that. Apparently, Ben Shapiro wandering around the expo floor was a big no-no. This is from the Podcast Movement. So Ben Shapiro wandered onto the expo floor. The Podcast Movement group then tweeted an apology for Ben Shapiro doing that. They said this. Hi, folks. I'm going to read it in the somber tone that I think they meant it to be in. Hi, folks. We owe you an apology. Before sessions kicked off for the day, Oh, I read that wrong already. They owe us apology before sessions kick off. Yesterday afternoon, Ben Shapiro briefly visited the PM22 Expo area near the Daily Wire booth. Though he was not registered or expected, we take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence. Those of you who called this unacceptable are right. In 9 wonderful years growing and celebrating this medium, podcast movement has made mistakes. The pain caused by this one will always stick with us. We promise that sponsors will be more carefully considered moving forward. This is an apology written to apologize for Ben Shapiro being in a room, not saying anything, not physically attacking anyone, not going around with a baseball bat and cracking people in the knees, not any of that. A person being in a place warranted this sort of an apology from an organization that allowed Daily Wire to have a booth there. Just to clarify, the Daily Wire representatives were scheduled to appear on panels, and Shapiro remained in the common space and did not have a badge. If you have any questions, we're here to talk. Thanks for reading, and hopefully you'll continue to join us from here on out. Those poor people that had to experience the presence of Ben Shapiro. This is no knock on Ben whatsoever. And Ben, if you happen to see this, I hope you don't take it personally. Ben is a very in-shape person, but not the biggest stature. I'm not the tallest guy either. There are a lot of people in the movement that are taller than both Ben and I. In other words, what I'm saying is he's not a huge physical intimidation presence. So that probably wasn't what caused this backlash of emotion. It literally was just him being in a room. I think Molly Hemingway tweeted after that, "Is this anti-Semitism? You're apologizing for a small Jewish man wandering into a space so profusely? Is that because you're a bunch of anti-Semites and don't like the Jews? Is that what you're doing here? Podcast Movement 2022. That tweet is still up, by the way. You can go to their thing and look at it. Gosh dang, I want to read it over and over and over again. We apologize. We take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence. I hope one day, just someday soon, I can stoke fear into the hearts of people by walking into a room and making jokes about the news in the same way that Ben Shapiro does. Man, so wonderful. That's that. I wanted to get to this video before we wrap up the day. A little bit behind schedule here, but I have a question for you guys in the comments section. Before I play this video, if you haven't already, click the little like button, the little share button. Would really appreciate you doing so. What do you think about Ben Shapiro? Maybe we'll get to some comments after this segment. But I got to ask the question here. Is this genius or is it madness? You decide. A man at Yankee Stadium, well, we're going to show you the video, but just in case you're just listening to this on the podcast, put a straw through his hot dog and then used his hot dog as a straw to drink his beer. Genius or madness? You in the comment section decide. Watch this very short video before we have a full-blown discussion about how to take this sort of content in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, up to you. Genius or madness? Joanna says madness. Anybody else in the comment section would like to weigh in here? Is this a great idea or a terrible idea? The whole idea of whether or not people should be doing this sort of thing in public. Julia says, sounds tasty. The salt would make the beer taste good. David says, it's stupid. Somebody else says, just doesn't look right. Laura says, gross. Wow, there's a lot of people that really don't like this guy. Desi says, gross. Ryan also says gross. Ryan watches pretty much every day. I really appreciate you doing that, dude, and giving your commentary. Always great to have it. But I don't know if I agree with you, Ryan, on this one. Sheila says stupidity. Rodney says creepy. Okay. Geez. Paul says beer dogs. Yeah. So people, wow, holy cow, they keep coming in. Wow, a lot of you are really upset about this. Oh my gosh, I didn't know this would strike so much upset in the comments section. It's a bit of both genius and madness. Yeah, I'll give you that. There is a fine line between genius and insanity, and maybe this man is tiptoeing that line for us all. There's a bunch of Ben Shapiro comments that I was going to get to, but just lost in the stream of comments of people giving their 2 cents on the hot dogs. Yeah. Wow. Oh, so here's the actual one. So Scott says, who uses a straw to drink beer in the first place? That's probably the kicker there. What made him think of it? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good... You know what? Actually, this is the winning comment. Evelyn says what I say about every political anything and anything anyone ever does at any point. Who cares? To each his own. I don't actually care. I really don't actually care. If this man also has a Brazilian butt lift, why would I care? I don't care at all. As long as I, as a taxpayer, am not paying for it, who the heck cares? So, Evelyn, you win the comments in the Is This Genius or Madness section. That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate all of you sticking around all week, enjoying the show. Have a great weekend, whatever it is that you're going to be doing this weekend. It's my mom's birthday. We'll be celebrating my mom's birthday, I believe, on Sunday, as it is on Monday. And yeah, I'm going to have a nice, fun weekend with the family, doing a couple church things, doing a couple house projects, maybe head down to the beach. Hope you have a nice weekend as well. Yeah. Appreciate all you tuning in. Geez, I've never seen the comments go so fast on people just being infuriated with the hot dog. Is what it is. All right, we'll see you on Monday. If anything happens over the weekend, you can follow me on Twitter, social media. I'll be tweeting about things incessantly. The college loan thing, anything happens from there when the courts finally decide, hey, yeah, this isn't legal, maybe we'll bring that to you over the weekend. And if not, we will see you on Monday morning. Same time, same place. See you then. God bless America.